if you look at the stock markets going up, you can also see that something else that is also going up and creating new all-time highs is global debt. And then I really understand economics, I really understand money, and this means that I really understand Bitcoin. And I'm sorry to say it, but if you hold 30 altcoins, then I know for sure that you didn't do your research.
So hey guys, today our guest is a popular video blogger and cryptocurrency price analyst, Carl Eric Martin from the Moon channel, and his channel is in the top 3 at this moment, which is really amazing. So hey Carl, it's great to see you. And first of all, how did you get this many views? It seems really cool. And how long have you been in this space?
Hello, yeah, so, well, first of all, I think that the simple fact that I upload one video every single day shows YouTube that I am consistent and that I am serious about my channel, and this triggers the algorithm to push my videos further and further. And when I started, I was, of course, a very small YouTube channel, but because of the fact that I did upload a lot of videos, and I used many different SEO tactics, so search engine optimization.
And when did you start it? Sorry.
Yeah, I started the channel in somewhere in 2018. But I started to be really serious in 2019. That's when I really started to make every single day one video, and yeah, ever since it has just taken off.
Okay, and so why did you decide to become a crypto trader?
First of all, I've always had an interest in monetary policy, in economics, macroeconomics. I loved to research about the current monetary system, basically. So I've researched the Federal Reserve System, the banking system, and what's bad with it, and what could potentially be good with it. But yeah, basically most of it is actually quite bad, and that is something that you can you realize that when you research the banking system, there are so many flaws that create many problems in the world. And so before I went into crypto, before Bitcoin, I researched all of this stuff, and I was into gold. I was investing in gold basically because of the fact that I believe that gold is a much better form of money than the US dollar. And because of this knowledge, when I heard about Bitcoin, it just made sense immediately to me, because basically I already did all of the research that that people do when they hear about Bitcoin. So some people, they do it the other way around. They find Bitcoin and then they start doing this research. But I was lucky to already have done it, and that's why the first time I heard about Bitcoin, I actually immediately thought that this is amazing. Yeah, ever since I've just researched Bitcoin a lot.
Interesting. And what are your thoughts on stock market? Are you experienced in that market as well?
What I believe is that when you look at the current market, the traditional market, globally there have been low interest rates for a very long period of time. So the interest rates have been artificially held low to prop up the stock markets, and this is something that is done. It's basically manipulation of the market, and not only have the interest rates been artificially kept low, but also central banks around the world have been printing huge amounts of money. We're talking about trillions of dollars that have been printed to basically bail out banks since 2008. And also more recently, we've seen the Federal Reserve, for example, start to print money in what is known as quantitative easing. And quantitative easing is just a very advanced word for printing money. And we've seen a lot of that happening globally. It's not only in the US. We've seen all central banks, most of the central banks in the world have been printing money, followed by the Federal Reserve. And this leads me to believe that I don't trust the current stock market rally that we see in the US stock market, for example. So you see the big FANG stocks taking off like crazy. They're creating new all-time highs all the time, but I don't trust those rallies. If you look at the stock market is going up, you can also see that something else that is also going up and creating new all-time highs is global debt. So yeah, when you look at tweets from Trump and other world leaders, they are very happy to point out that stock markets are going up, but they are not disclosing that also the debt is going up in the exact same speed, and they are both interconnected, they are co-integrated basically. When debt goes up, or when you print money, lower interest rates, and increase the purchasing power, you increase basically you what they do is they artificially create this buying power by making it cheap to borrow currency, and that's why we see stock markets go up and also real estate markets.
But isn't it a good way to make money for yourself personally?
Sure, you can trade the stock markets and make money from what the Federal Reserve is doing. However, personally, I am not really doing that because if there was anything I would do, it would probably be short if we're talking about the bigger swings here. I mean, many people in the gold community have been looking to short the S&P, for example, because they know that something is wrong, and eventually it has to correct. But the thing about markets is that, especially when you have a central authority manipulating the market, is that it's extremely unpredictable. So the government and central banks, they are incentivized to keep the stock markets going up, and if you bet on it going down, then you will basically lose money. And I don't remember who said it, but there's a famous quote saying that the markets can stay irrational much longer than you can stay solvent. So even if you correctly assume or correctly see that the market is going in the wrong direction and it has to correct, the market tends to it can continue to go on an insane rally, unjustified rally, and longer than you might think. So just shorting based on these fundamentals is not really profitable. Actually, it's the exact opposite. Everyone who shorted the S&P in 2015 lost, and everyone who shorted the past few months have also lost, even though they are right. Fundamentally, the S&P and all of these stocks have to correct. It's just insane seeing the PE ratios off the charts, and we're seeing the same discrepancy between prices and fundamentals as back in the dot-com bubble, for example. And eventually there will be a pop, but let's see. It's impossible to know when it's going to happen.
That's interesting. And are you an investor, Carl? What cryptocurrencies do you invest in and why? If yes.
Yeah. So yeah, for sure I am a cryptocurrency investor. I would call myself actually a Bitcoin investor. So for the past 2 years, essentially the only thing I've been holding is Bitcoin in terms of cryptocurrencies. 98 to 99% Bitcoin. I had some altcoins that I just didn't liquidate all of my altcoins. Just to keep it very simple, I just say that I only hold Bitcoin. Up until actually just a couple of months ago when I started to scale back into Ethereum. And everyone who follows my YouTube channel, they know that I am basically what some would call a Bitcoin maximalist. I believe in Bitcoin much more than I believe in crypto in general. I believe that Bitcoin is fundamentally game-changing, and it's a huge revolution for the world economy and actually the world in general. It's a paradigm shift, seeing money being shifted from a central authority into in a decentralized nature. That is something that is extremely important. And when it comes to other altcoins and cryptocurrencies, I do believe that these could potentially there might potentially be very, very interesting projects out there that will change the world in some different aspect or form. But personally, I tend to invest in in the things that I really understand, and I really understand economics. I really understand money, and this means that I really understand Bitcoin, and that's why I'm confident in holding a lot of Bitcoin. When it comes to altcoins, the only thing I do there is trades, and that's like maybe a swing trade over a few weeks or over a few days, maybe even an intraday trade, but not for the long term.
But what cryptocurrencies do you consider to be the most promising, apart from Bitcoin?
I would have to say Ethereum, and that's basically that's my list: Bitcoin, Ethereum, and I know that there are competitors out there to Ethereum, but I do believe that the fact that Ethereum has the network effect, it already has a lot of momentum going. So this first mover's advantage peaking in favor of Ethereum, basically. But I am much more bullish on Bitcoin than I am on Ethereum. Much more. Basically, right now I hold approximately 95% Bitcoin or 90% Bitcoin, and somewhere between 5 and 10% Ethereum. And that is, I don't think I want to hold more Ethereum than that, actually. And this Ethereum is actually not even for the very long term. It's more like a maybe 1 year or 2 year play or something. If Ethereum 5x's against Bitcoin, I will sell into Bitcoin.
Okay, so let's check your prediction skills then. How much will Bitcoin cost at the end of 2020?
So the halving is coming up, and the halving is a very important event because the inflation rate will be cut in half, and this is something that happens every 4 years. And I think that looking back at the previous history, we can see that the two previous halvings radically pushed the price to the upside. This doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen this time,
Right.
but I do believe that the attention that is going to be put on Bitcoin during the halving and after the halving is going to be huge, and people are once again going to start talking about the fact that not only are we going to see a halving now, but like I said, every 4 years until the inflation goes down to zero, and that is a huge deal because a zero inflation rate is something that you don't find anywhere else. You don't see it. Bitcoin is the first time we've ever seen this because Bitcoin is digital, and this can only happen in a digital world. So Bitcoin is something that I would call absolutely scarce. It's not only scarce, but it's actually absolutely scarce with this 21 million Bitcoin limit. And so all of this, what I just said, is exactly what people are going to, that's the story that is going to be told in the next few months and maybe even up to the next year. And it's hard for me to not be very bullish for Bitcoin during 2020. And I think it's very possible that Bitcoin could reach above 20,000 at the end of this year. That's very possible. But I am not entirely sure if that's going to happen because if you compare with the previous cycles, yeah, I would love to have a chart here, but basically, if you were to compare with the previous cycles and you measure from the previous all-time high to where we breach above the previous all-time high, basically somewhere in the beginning of 2021 is where Bitcoin should go above 20,000. But previous price action doesn't necessarily have to accurately predict the future. But I'm bullish for Bitcoin. I am very confident that Bitcoin will be worth more at the end of this year than it is today.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And the last question, what advice can you give to people who want to become crypto traders?
So I think that you absolutely have to educate yourself before touching trading at all, before touching altcoins, before even touching Bitcoin. Even though I personally believe in Bitcoin 100% and I believe that it's going to change the world, I still always tell people before they buy Bitcoin that you have to do your own research and you have to educate yourself. Don't take my word for granted. Don't take anyone's word for granted. And education is key and knowledge is key. This goes for Bitcoin, altcoins, and trading all in all. And I would basically suggest doing research online, on YouTube, reading books, and make sure that you always have proper risk management. That's extremely important. In terms of trading, you should never trade with more than 1% of the holdings on your account, and your account should never be more than maybe up to maybe a maximum of 5-10% of your total holdings, maybe even less than that. I mean, all of this is up to every individual, but you need to at least set your own rules and keep them. And the same goes for altcoins. Maybe never hold more than 10 altcoins. choose 10 that you believe in, if you believe in them, and stick to them. And because if you have 20 or 30 altcoins, it's impossible to keep track of all news and developments. And I'm sorry to say it, but if you hold 30 altcoins, then I know for sure that you didn't do your research, because it's impossible to know that 30 altcoins. So I would say maybe even maximum 5 altcoins. Choose the 5 best that you can find if you even do want to invest in altcoins. Like I said, I don't even do that myself. I only short-term trades is the maximum I do there. I don't hold them for the long term. What I usually say is to people that I think that every cryptocurrency investor should actually hold at least 80% Bitcoin in their crypto portfolio. That has always been my rule, and I hold more Bitcoin than that. But I think that's reasonable, because Bitcoin's risk-reward ratio is just unique. You cannot find that anywhere else. And of course, altcoins can go 10x in the next few weeks, but they can also go to 0. So if you want high potential reward with low risk, then just bet on Bitcoin.